The Last of Us, a show about a zombie apocalypse based on a popular video game, is a huge hit. Notably, the entire premise of the plot is based on global warming. Even a little global warming would enable a certain type of fungus to attack humans and turning them into monsters. Some scientists assume that changes in temperature could lead to mutations and indeed new dangers for humans, in terms of fungus, but you need to be careful with these narratives. If in the near future a serious pandemic happens, you will be confronted with different conflicting narratives. Some will say the cause was global warming, because that changed the fungus. Or bats or monkeys had moved outside of their normal territories. Some will say the Russians had caused this. The Russians will say it was a false flag by the Americans. China will blame the US and vice versa. Some will claim this was all the work of a leftist deep state. Some will say a right-wing deep state is exploiting the crisis. You will need to focus in such an event, make good choices, and work with other people regardless of their ideology. Now, classic zombie movies clearly showed Marxist influences. Dawn of the Dead took place in a shopping mall which gets conquered by a small group of people who then have to defend it against zombies and other humans. Later zombie franchises, especially video games, had evil corporations such as Umbrella in the Resident Evil series. The global warming idea behind The Last of Us is somewhat disturbing, and not just because you may see a lot of blame in the future once a new pandemic happens. Most people are completely unaware of the true nature of elite scientific networks in the US and the former British colonial empire. The Royal Society and its offshoots created the modern understanding of medicine, bioweapons, and climate science. Sometimes these different fields actually converged when weather experts had to figure out how to spread biological weapons most efficiently. The invasion of Normandy in World War II would not have been possible without leading weather experts and the fight for the best data. The war-era weather experts became the leading climate scientists, and this entire field remained a core aspect for all military operations. You always depend on the weather and the climate, so whoever makes the best predictions has the upper hand. The UK Met Office always was military and nowadays runs the deciding climate prediction software. The data is dependent on NASA and NOAA from the US, which appear to be civilian but have a clear military background. After the Apollo mission to the moon, the focus of NASA became less deep space, but the Earth. If you surveil a planet, you don't get just to see icebergs and forests, but also enemy military installations. The race for the dominance in the field of bioweapons became a priority for Russia as well, culminating in the Bioattack program, which produced enough super smallpox and other pathogens to destroy the world's population. Later in the game, China became a significant player. The entire biomedical complex there is somehow tied to the military. So-called gain-of-function research has become the norm, secretly, not the exception. If someone creates and actually uses, let's say, a new prion disease or a new type of rabies disease, the result could look pretty much like a zombie apocalypse. Of course, the superpowers have other enemies and competitors. The best bet to slow down the superpowers is a bioattack, one that seems to have a natural origin. And that's why you should not have a fixed bias and predetermined opinion about the origins of pandemics. The Last of Us, as the new hit show, suggests global warming. But there's always the option to blame overpopulation in general, industrial food production, and that sort of thing. A pandemic would be a pretext to reorder society, promising to prevent such a thing from ever happening again. If actual significant warming doesn't happen in 10 or 20 years, if the oceans don't really rise, if you don't get massive change, that's not just regional normal fluctuations, a pandemic could be used to claim victory in the climate debate. So watch out for that. Recently, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in the US announced a breakthrough with fusion energy. The press focused on energy production, which is still not a short or mid-term option. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, however, spilled the beans. that laboratory has always focused on developing nuclear warheads. And the fusion experiments create conditions you would normally find in a nuclear test explosion. Therefore, you can experiment in the lab and develop the next generation of nuclear warheads. Making the world carbon neutral is viewed by activists not just as saving the environment, it's viewed as ending imperialism and all evil. However, if the United States and Britain control the new patents for CO2 neutral products, fuel or concrete, fertilizer, it would be the next level of imperialism. Climate science is so vast, hyper-complicated, and split into different aspects that the average scientist has to rely on the data given to him, and there's no real way to determine how much off-target they are. There's simply too much data. Different aspects then would have to be combined perfectly and then translated into computer code perfectly to have a program, an app that can calculate the temperatures in 50 or 100 years. You only need a little hidden manipulation here and there to mess with the results. So of course, hundreds of thousands of different experts are not knowingly part of a conspiracy. They only have an average trust in these software modeling programs, but some bad quality studies claim that 97% of scientists are totally on board with the IPCC and the debate is over. Those studies simply use databases of scientific papers, entered terms like climate change, and then only looked at the short abstracts and basically counted everything as an affirmation of the IPCC. Which doesn't tell you how accurate these prediction models are. Leftists don't know that climate science is controlled by the US military complex and Britain. Not even right-wingers understand that, because nobody has been looking at this properly. If you just politicize the topic in left versus right, you won't get anywhere.